Captain Jerome Williams wasn't just responding to the aircraft emergency alarm that day as backup support, but when airport firefighters questioned his specialized training, 247 passengers discovered something that would make him their only hope for survival. Captain Jerome Williams responded to the urgent aircraft emergency alarm at Miami International Airport with the swift precision and specialized expertise of someone who had spent the last 23 extraordinary years mastering every aspect of aviation firefighting, aircraft rescue operations, and emergency response protocols that required intimate knowledge of commercial aircraft systems, fuel containment procedures, and passenger evacuation techniques that could mean the difference between life and death during critical incidents involving hundreds of travelers whose safety depended on immediate, expert intervention from highly trained specialists. At 48 years old, he carried himself with the focused intensity and professional competence that comes from accumulating over 12,000 hours of specialized aviation rescue training, completing advanced certifications in aircraft firefighting from the National Fire Academy, and leading countless emergency responses that had earned him recognition as one of the most skilled and experienced aviation fire specialists in the southeastern United States. Through innovative rescue techniques and exceptional performance under extreme pressure conditions. His credentials included aircraft rescue and firefighting certification, hazardous materials response specialization, emergency medical technician authorization, and numerous advanced technical endorsements that qualified him to handle everything from routine aircraft incidents to catastrophic emergency situations involving structural fires, fuel system failures, and mass casualty events that required coordinated response from multiple agencies and specialized equipment designed specifically for aviation emergency operations. Today's emergency involved a Boeing 747 aircraft that had experienced landing gear failure during approach, creating a high-risk situation that demanded immediate deployment of specialized foam systems, precision aircraft approach techniques, and coordinated passenger evacuation procedures that required expertise in aircraft design, emergency exit locations, and passenger safety protocols that were far more complex and demanding than standard structural firefighting operations that most personnel were trained to handle. His navy blue firefighter uniform bore the specialized patches and certification insignia that immediately identified him to knowledgeable observers as someone with extraordinary qualifications and authority in aviation emergency response. Though his appearance as a black firefighter in a specialized field, historically dominated by white personnel, often led to immediate assumptions and prejudiced reactions from colleagues and incident commanders who couldn't reconcile his obvious competence with their limited understanding of contemporary emergency services, leadership, and specialized technical expertise in high-stakes aviation rescue operations. Battalion Chief Michael O'Brien, a veteran firefighter with 18 years of traditional structural firefighting experience but limited exposure to aviation emergency operations, immediately noticed Jerome approaching the aircraft staging area and felt compelled to redirect what he perceived as an overeager general firefighter toward less critical support roles that wouldn't require the specialized knowledge and advanced technical skills necessary for direct aircraft rescue operations and passenger safety coordination. O'Brien's background in conventional firefighting and his traditional approach to emergency command had shaped his assumptions about personnel capabilities and specialized qualifications, leading him to believe that he could accurately assess someone's expertise based on superficial characteristics rather than actual training, certification, or professional accomplishments that might not be immediately apparent during the chaos and urgency of emergency response operations. Williams, Battalion Chief O'Brien called out, with obvious authority and hierarchical positioning, as he approached Jerome with the commanding presence of someone who believed he was efficiently organizing emergency response personnel according to their appropriate skill levels and operational capabilities during a complex aviation incident that required careful coordination and strategic deployment of resources to ensure effective rescue operations and passenger safety. I need you to set up perimeter control and traffic management while the aviation specialists handle the aircraft approach and rescue operations that require advanced technical knowledge and specialized equipment. His directive carried unmistakable implications that he considered Jerome unsuitable for direct aircraft rescue involvement, suggesting that his role should be limited to support functions that didn't require the sophisticated understanding of aircraft systems, emergency procedures, and passenger evacuation protocols that characterized specialty and aviation firefighting operations. Jerome paused in his systematic review of aircraft emergency procedures and turned to address his battalion chief with the patient professionalism that had served him throughout his career when dealing with colleagues who underestimated his qualifications and failed to recognize his specialized expertise in aviation rescue operations that exceeded the knowledge and training of most traditional firefighters. "Chief O'Brien," he replied with calm authority while retrieving his comprehensive certification documentation from his emergency response kit, which contained advanced aviation rescue credentials, specialized training certificates, and technical qualifications that established his legitimate authority to lead aircraft emergency operations and coordinate passenger rescue activities. "I'm certified for aircraft rescue and firefighting operations, and my specialized training in aviation emergency response makes me the most qualified person on scene to handle this type of Boeing 747 incident." O'Brien examined his credentials with obvious skepticism and professional reluctance to acknowledge their significance, studying the specialized certifications as if they were somehow insufficient to justify direct involvement in what he considered to be the most critical and technically demanding aspects of the emergency response operation that required years of specialized training and advanced technical knowledge. "These aviation certificates don't necessarily mean you have the practical experience necessary to handle a complex wide-body aircraft emergency," he said dismissively, while returning Jerome's credentials with obvious reluctance and continued insistence on maintaining traditional command hierarchy that prioritized his own authority over specialized expertise and technical qualifications. "We have protocols and procedures that designate appropriate personnel for different aspects of emergency operations, and I need you to focus on support roles that match your general firefighting background." His condescending explanation and obvious bias against specialized aviation credentials demonstrated his fundamental misunderstanding of the technical complexity and specialized knowledge required for effective aircraft rescue operations, where advanced training and aviation-specific expertise were essential for successful outcomes and passenger safety during emergency situations involving commercial aircraft systems and evacuation procedures. As the aircraft emergency continued to develop with increasing urgency and complexity, requiring immediate deployment of specialized foam systems and coordinated approach procedures that demanded intimate knowledge of Boeing 747 emergency protocols and passenger evacuation techniques, Jerome began documenting the systematic patterns of exclusion and institutional hierarchy that were preventing him from utilizing his specialized expertise, despite comprehensive qualifications and internationally recognized training in exactly the types of aviation rescue operations that the current emergency situation demanded for successful resolution and passenger safety. He observed how white firefighters with general training and limited aviation experience were automatically assigned to critical aircraft rescue positions without any verification of their specialized qualifications or advanced technical knowledge, while his presence near the aircraft was consistently questioned and redirected toward peripheral support roles, despite his superior training and extensive experience in aviation emergency response that far exceeded the qualifications of most personnel working on the incident. The differential treatment was so obvious and systematic that several emergency responders began expressing discomfort about the discriminatory deployment patterns they were observing, though none felt confident enough to directly challenge command decisions during an active emergency situation that required coordinated response and clear chain of command, even when those decisions appeared to be based on prejudiced assumptions rather than actual qualifications and specialized expertise. O'Brien continued his exclusionary commands by assigning Jerome to increasingly distant support roles that effectively prevented him from accessing the aircraft or participating in the technical rescue operations that required his specialized knowledge and advanced training, apparently believing that traditional firefighting hierarchy and racial assumptions were more important than specialized qualifications and technical expertise during a complex aviation emergency that demanded the most skilled and experienced personnel available. "Captain Williams," he said with obvious dismissal and bureaucratic authority, "I need you to coordinate with the perimeter teams and ensure that emergency vehicle access remains clear while the qualified aviation specialists handle the technical aspects of aircraft approach and passenger rescue operations." His continued emphasis on excluding Jerome from direct aircraft involvement, despite clear evidence of specialized qualifications, demonstrated the persistence of institutional bias and discriminatory practices that prioritize traditional hierarchy over technical expertise and specialized training that could be essential for successful emergency outcomes. Jerome recognized the familiar pattern of professional exclusion and systematic discrimination that he had encountered throughout his career in emergency services, though he remained committed to finding opportunities to contribute his specialized expertise and technical knowledge, despite the personal and professional obstacles created by commanders who prioritized maintaining traditional power structures over deploying the most qualified personnel for specialist emergency operations that required advanced training and aviation-specific knowledge. As the Boeing 747 emergency situation continued to deteriorate with reports of potential fuel system complications and increasing passenger distress that elevated the incident from routine landing gear failure to a complex emergency requiring immediate specialized intervention and advanced rescue coordination, more emergency personnel, airport officials, and specialized response teams began arriving at the scene to observe the developing crisis that was testing the limits of traditional emergency response protocols and highlighting the critical importance of specialized aviation rescue expertise. Fire Captain Maria Rodriguez, an experienced emergency responder with 12 years of multi-agency coordination experience, who had witnessed the effectiveness of specialized aviation rescue training during previous aircraft incidents, approached the command area with obvious concern about the deployment strategies and personnel assignments that appeared to be prioritizing traditional hierarchy over specialized qualifications and technical expertise that could be essential for successful emergency resolution and passenger safety. "Chief O'Brien," she said diplomatically, while observing the complex aircraft situation and growing passenger evacuation requirements, "shouldn't we be utilizing our most experienced aviation rescue specialist for direct aircraft operations, especially given the increasing complexity of this Boeing 747 emergency and the specialized foam deployment requirements?" Her professional assessment and obvious concern about optimal resource deployment immediately highlighted the discrepancy between available expertise and current personnel assignments that were preventing the most qualified responder from participating in critical rescue operations. O'Brien responded defensively to Rodriguez's inquiry, his explanation revealing both his limited understanding of aviation rescue requirements and his reluctance to acknowledge that his personnel deployment decisions might not be optimizing available expertise and specialized qualifications during a critical emergency situation that demanded the most skilled and experienced responders. "Captain Rodriguez, I'm managing this incident according to established protocols and appropriate chain of command that ensures effective coordination and prevents confusion during complex emergency operations," he replied with obvious irritation at having his authority and decision-making questioned by subordinates who might not understand the complexity of incident command and resource management during high-stress situations. Jerome continued his professional observation of the developing emergency while maintaining his readiness to contribute his specialized expertise despite the systematic exclusion and discriminatory treatment that was preventing him from utilizing his advanced training and technical knowledge that could be crucial for successful passenger rescue and aircraft emergency resolution. Among the growing crowd of emergency responders and airport officials were several aviation safety specialists and aircraft rescue coordinators, who began recognizing that the most qualified aviation rescue expert was being systematically excluded from direct involvement in an emergency situation that specifically required his specialized knowledge and advanced technical skills. Airport Emergency Coordinator Lisa Chen, who had been monitoring the incident from the Airport Operations Center and growing increasingly concerned about the complexity of the Boeing 747 emergency and the need for specialized aviation rescue expertise, finally decided to investigate the personnel deployment and ensure that the most qualified responders were being utilized effectively for this critical aviation emergency that could affect hundreds of passengers and crew members. Airport Emergency Coordinator Chen approached the incident command area with the decisive authority of someone who understood both the technical requirements of aviation emergency response and the critical importance of deploying the most qualified personnel during complex aircraft incidents that required specialized knowledge, advanced training, and proven expertise in aviation rescue operations that could determine the outcome for hundreds of passengers and crew members whose safety depended on optimal emergency response coordination. "Chief O'Brien," she said with professional urgency and obvious concern as she quickly assessed the emergency situation and current personnel deployment patterns. "I need to understand why Captain Williams isn't leading the aircraft rescue operations, given his specialized aviation firefighting credentials and extensive experience with wide-body aircraft emergencies." Her direct intervention and authoritative position as Airport Emergency Coordinator immediately changed the dynamics of the incident command structure as emergency personnel began to understand that specialized qualifications and technical expertise might be more important than traditional hierarchy during complex aviation emergencies. Chen quickly reviewed Jerome's comprehensive documentation and specialized certifications while simultaneously monitoring the deteriorating aircraft situation that was requiring increasingly sophisticated rescue coordination and advanced technical intervention that exceeded the capabilities of general firefighting personnel who lacked specialized aviation rescue training and experience. "Captain Williams," she said with immediate respect and professional recognition after examining his extraordinary qualifications and specialized training credentials, "your aviation rescue and firefighting certifications are exactly what we need for this Boeing 747 emergency, and I'm directing immediate deployment of your expertise for direct aircraft rescue coordination." Her intervention immediately established Jerome's authority and specialized qualifications, while creating accountability for deployment decisions that had been preventing the most qualified responder from participating in critical rescue operations that required his advanced training and technical knowledge. O'Brien watched with obvious discomfort and professional resistance as his exclusionary decisions were being overruled by higher authority that recognized the importance of specialized expertise over traditional hierarchy during complex aviation emergencies that demanded the most skilled and experienced personnel available for successful resolution and passenger safety. "Coordinator Chen," he said defensively in an attempt to justify his discriminatory deployment decisions, "I was following established protocols for incident command and resource management that ensure appropriate coordination and prevent operational confusion during complex emergency situations." His explanation sounded increasingly inadequate and professionally inappropriate as more emergency personnel began to understand that specialized qualifications and technical expertise should determine deployment decisions during aviation emergencies rather than traditional assumptions and hierarchical preferences that might not optimize available resources and specialized knowledge. As Coordinator Chen continued reviewing Captain Williams's extensive documentation and specialized training portfolio, her expression gradually shifted from professional urgency to obvious amazement and growing recognition of the extraordinary level of expertise and specialized achievement represented by the individual who had been so inappropriately excluded from critical rescue operations based solely on discriminatory assumptions and traditional hierarchy that failed to recognize advanced qualifications and technical knowledge essential for successful aviation emergency response. "Captain Williams," she said, with increasing respect and professional admiration as she studied his specialized certifications, advanced training records, and emergency response accomplishments that revealed the scope of his contributions to aviation rescue operations and emergency response excellence. "I'm beginning to understand that we have one of the nation's most qualified aviation rescue specialists available for this emergency, and we need to immediately deploy your expertise for optimal passenger safety and rescue coordination." The documentation revealed that Jerome was not simply a qualified firefighter with basic aviation training, but rather a specialized expert whose advanced education and extensive experience had established him as one of the most knowledgeable and skilled aviation rescue specialists in the United States, with credentials and training that exceeded the qualifications of virtually all emergency responders typically available during aircraft incidents. His specialized training included advanced aircraft systems knowledge, sophisticated foam application techniques, complex passenger evacuation coordination, and emergency medical response capabilities that were specifically designed for aviation incidents and had been proven effective during numerous successful rescue operations throughout his distinguished career. The passenger evacuation protocols that are now standard throughout the aviation industry, Chen continued with obvious excitement and professional respect, incorporated rescue techniques and safety procedures that Captain Williams helped develop during his work on federal aviation emergency response programs, and his expertise in wide-body aircraft rescue operations could be the determining factor in the successful resolution of this Boeing 747 emergency. Emergency responders and airport officials who had gathered around the incident command area began expressing their amazement and professional recognition of someone whose specialized knowledge and advanced training represented exactly the type of expertise that was essential for complex aviation rescue operations, creating an atmosphere of respect and operational readiness that stood in stark contrast to the discriminatory exclusion and institutional bias that had characterized the initial personnel deployment decisions. The transformation from systematic exclusion to professional recognition demonstrated how discriminatory assumptions and traditional hierarchy could prevent emergency services from utilizing their most qualified personnel during critical situations that required specialized expertise and advanced technical knowledge for successful outcomes and optimal passenger safety. Coordinator Chen immediately recognized that the continued exclusion of the most qualified aviation rescue specialist represented a serious operational failure that could compromise passenger safety and emergency response effectiveness during a critical situation that demanded immediate deployment of specialized expertise and advanced technical knowledge that could determine the outcome for hundreds of people whose lives depended on optimal rescue coordination and professional emergency response. "Captain Williams," she said with unmistakable authority and professional respect, as she officially designated him as the lead aviation rescue coordinator for the Boeing 747 emergency, "I'm placing you in direct command of all aircraft rescue operations, foam deployment, and passenger evacuation coordination, effective immediately." Her decisive intervention and clear recognition of specialized qualifications sent an unmistakable message to all emergency personnel that technical expertise and advanced training would determine operational assignments during complex aviation emergencies, rather than traditional hierarchy or discriminatory assumptions that had no place in professional emergency response operations. O'Brien reluctantly stepped aside with obvious resentment and defensive posturing that clearly indicated his inability to understand or acknowledge that specialized qualifications and technical expertise should take precedence over traditional command preferences during aviation emergencies that required advanced knowledge and proven experience for successful resolution and passenger safety. "Ma'am," he said defensively, in a final attempt to maintain his authority and justify his discriminatory deployment decisions, "I was following established incident command protocols that ensure appropriate coordination and prevent operational confusion during complex emergency situations." His explanation only served to further highlight his misunderstanding of specialized emergency response requirements and demonstrate his failure to recognize that aviation rescue operations demanded advanced technical knowledge and specialized training that exceeded traditional firefighting qualifications and general emergency response experience. Jerome immediately assumed operational command with the confident expertise and specialized knowledge that had made him one of the most respected aviation rescue specialists in emergency services, quickly assessing the aircraft situation and deploying advanced rescue techniques that required intimate understanding of Boeing 747 systems, passenger evacuation procedures, and specialized foam application methods that were essential for successful emergency resolution. All units, he announced with clear authority and professional competence over the emergency communications system. We're implementing specialized wide-body aircraft rescue procedures with coordinated foam deployment and systematic passenger evacuation that will optimize safety outcomes and ensure effective rescue coordination. His immediate demonstration of specialized expertise and advanced technical knowledge created confidence among emergency responders and airport officials who recognized that they were now being led by someone whose qualifications and experience were specifically designed for exactly this type of complex aviation emergency situation. As Captain Williams assumed operational command of the Boeing 747 emergency response, his specialized expertise and advanced technical knowledge immediately became apparent to everyone involved in the rescue operations as he deployed sophisticated coordination techniques, implemented advanced safety protocols, and directed complex passenger evacuation procedures that demonstrated the extraordinary level of training and professional competence that had been systematically excluded from the emergency response until coordinator intervention recognized the critical importance of specialized qualifications over traditional hierarchy. Emergency units, we're implementing coordinated foam suppression with precision aircraft approach that requires intimate knowledge of Boeing 747 fuel system locations and emergency exit configurations, he explained, with the clear authority and comprehensive understanding that had made him a recognized expert in aviation rescue operations throughout the emergency services community. His detailed knowledge of aircraft systems, passenger safety procedures, and emergency coordination protocols enabled him to quickly identify and address potential complications that had not been apparent to personnel with general firefighting training but limited aviation rescue experience, preventing escalation of the emergency situation and optimizing safety outcomes for all passengers and crew members. The coordinated rescue operation that Jerome directed involved precise timing, advanced technical procedures, and specialized equipment deployment that required years of training and extensive experience to execute effectively, demonstrating the critical importance of deploying qualified specialists during complex aviation emergencies rather than relying on traditional hierarchy and general emergency response personnel who lacked the advanced knowledge necessary for optimal outcomes. Foam deployment teams coordinate with aircraft approach vector using specialized wide-body suppression patterns that account for fuel system distribution and passenger evacuation priorities. He continued with technical precision and operational expertise that immediately improved rescue coordination and safety effectiveness while preventing potential complications that could have threatened passenger safety and rescue operation success. Emergency responders who had initially questioned his qualifications began expressing obvious respect and professional admiration for his expertise as they witnessed the immediate improvement in rescue coordination and safety procedures that resulted from deploying specialized knowledge and advanced training during the complex aviation emergency. Video recordings and radio communications from the emergency response began documenting the transformation in operational effectiveness that occurred when specialized expertise was properly utilized, creating evidence of the critical importance of recognizing and deploying qualified personnel during aviation emergencies rather than maintaining discriminatory practices that could compromise passenger safety and emergency response outcomes. The successful coordination of complex rescue operations under Jerome's specialized leadership demonstrated how technical expertise and advanced training could determine the difference between successful emergency resolution and potential catastrophic outcomes during critical aviation incidents that required specialized knowledge and proven experience. The moment Captain Williams successfully coordinated the complex Boeing 747 emergency response that resulted in the safe evacuation of all 247 passengers and crew members without serious injury or loss of life, The extraordinary significance of his specialized expertise and advanced training became undeniably apparent to everyone involved in the rescue operations, as they witnessed the direct correlation between specialized knowledge and successful emergency outcomes that could only have been achieved through years of dedicated training and extensive experience in aviation rescue operations. "Ladies and gentlemen," Coordinator Chen announced with obvious pride and professional gratitude as she addressed the assembled emergency responders, airport officials, and media representatives who had gathered to witness the successful resolution of what could have been a catastrophic aviation emergency. The successful rescue of 247 passengers and crew members was made possible by the exceptional expertise and specialized knowledge of Captain Jerome Williams, one of the nation's most qualified aviation rescue specialists, whose advanced training and technical competence represent the highest standards of emergency response excellence and professional competence. The revelation created immediate recognition and professional respect among all emergency personnel who understood that they had witnessed a demonstration of specialized expertise that had directly prevented potential loss of life and catastrophic outcomes during a complex aviation emergency that required advanced technical knowledge and proven experience for successful resolution. O'Brien, who had been observing the successful rescue operations from a distance with obvious professional embarrassment and growing understanding of his mistake, finally began to comprehend the magnitude of his discriminatory decisions and the extraordinary individual whose specialized expertise he had so inappropriately excluded based on prejudiced assumptions rather than factual assessment of qualifications and technical competence that were essential for successful aviation emergency response. Captain Williams's coordination of this complex rescue operation, Chen continued with genuine admiration and professional respect, demonstrated exactly the type of specialized expertise and advanced technical knowledge that makes the difference between successful emergency outcomes and potential catastrophic consequences during aviation incidents that require immediate deployment of the most qualified and experienced personnel available. The assembled emergency responders, airport officials, and passengers who had been safely evacuated began expressing their gratitude and professional recognition for someone whose specialized knowledge and expert coordination had directly contributed to their safety and the successful resolution of a potentially catastrophic emergency situation that could have resulted in serious injuries or loss of life without proper expertise and advanced technical intervention. This is why truth always comes to light, and justice always finds its way. If this story shows you that dignity and respect matter more than assumptions, make sure you subscribe to see more stories where justice prevails. Because when we stand together against discrimination, we make real change happen. Following the successful resolution of the Boeing 747 emergency and the undeniable demonstration of how specialized expertise and advanced training could determine life and death outcomes during complex aviation incidents, Airport Emergency Coordinator Chen immediately initiated comprehensive reforms to emergency response protocols, personnel deployment procedures, and discrimination prevention measures that would ensure optimal utilization of qualified specialists during critical situations while eliminating systematic bias that could compromise operational effectiveness and passenger safety. Battalion Chief O'Brien was immediately enrolled in mandatory diversity training and specialized aviation emergency response education that would address his discriminatory deployment decisions and provide him with proper understanding of specialized qualifications and technical expertise that should determine personnel assignments during complex emergency operations, regardless of traditional hierarchy or personal assumptions about individual capabilities. The incident became a catalyst for industry-wide discussions about discrimination in emergency services and the critical importance of recognizing and deploying specialized expertise during aviation emergencies that required advanced technical knowledge and proven experience for successful outcomes and optimal safety results that could affect hundreds of lives during critical incidents. Jerome's successful coordination of the complex rescue operation became a model for effective aviation emergency response throughout the emergency services community as documentation and analysis of his specialized techniques spread across professional networks and training programs, inspiring emergency departments nationwide to examine their own deployment practices and ensure appropriate recognition of specialized qualifications and advanced training that could be essential during critical aviation incidents. Within months of the incident, Miami International Airport had implemented Captain Williams's specialized rescue protocols as part of a comprehensive modernization program that improved emergency response effectiveness, reduced potential for discriminatory deployment decisions, and established the facility as a leader in innovative aviation emergency coordination that attracted recognition from federal agencies and emergency services organizations throughout the aviation industry. The transformation extended beyond individual attitudes and facility policies to influence broader conversations about diversity in emergency services, the importance of recognizing and supporting specialized expertise regardless of demographic characteristics, and the critical need for systematic changes that would ensure optimal deployment of qualified personnel during emergency situations that could determine life and death outcomes for passengers and crew members who depended on professional emergency response coordination. Federal emergency management agencies recognized the facility's successful implementation of specialized aviation rescue protocols by designating it as a training center for advanced aviation emergency response, creating ongoing opportunities for collaboration between emergency services organizations, specialized rescue specialists, and aviation safety agencies who shared common goals of advancing safety, effectiveness, and professional excellence in aviation emergency coordination and passenger protection systems. Captain Williams's story became a powerful example of how professional expertise and specialized knowledge could triumph over institutional bias and discriminatory practices while creating opportunities for systematic improvement and life-saving advancement that benefited entire industries and contributed to broader emergency services progress and human safety protection. The lasting impact extended far beyond aviation emergency response to influence how emergency services organizations, government agencies, and specialized rescue teams approached questions of diversity, inclusion, and optimal personnel deployment that could unlock life-saving capabilities and advance human safety protection through professional cooperation and mutual respect for expertise and specialized achievement, regardless of traditional barriers and prejudiced assumptions that had historically limited opportunities for qualified specialists and innovative emergency response professionals. But Captain Williams's story is just one example of how truth always comes to light in the aviation industry. Next video. Watch what happens when a black woman's 15-year secret is revealed during aircraft safety inspection. When FAA officials question her authority to ground flights, the most shocking regulatory moment in aviation history unfolds. You won't believe what happens when safety meets power. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and turn on notifications for new content. Don't forget to hit the like button if this story moved you, and share your thoughts and opinions about this situation in the comments below.